Oh, hi, Frank Figliuzzi. Good morning.
Oh, good morning. We just happened to be here while the jingle is playing. Fantastic.
In front of your beautiful Arizona backdrop where it's 1,001 degrees today. Good morning.
Cold front today, so it's just 1,000, not 1,001.
So, you have apparently you have activated Tucker Carlson's Extra Crazy, talking about him doubling down on this latest. It's the FBI behind January 6th. I mean, I take from your commentary on TV, Frank, and the piece that you wrote, I mean, maybe we should take this as good news that the FBI is obviously getting close and going up the food chain, right, on January 6th, because they're freaking out. And that's a preemptive move, right, to go, oh, the FBI did it. So, of course, they're going to accuse us of doing it.
Yeah, as you're saying, I did provoke the wrath of the Fox News followers because I'm getting an unusually high number of very vile and profane threats simply because I challenged the notion that the FBI orchestrated the insurrection. And the Fox News craziness. What happened was there was an article in a fringe magazine, I won't even mention it, online that said, oh, look at all the unindicted co-conspirators and all the indictments for January 6th. Those unindicted co-conspirators who were not named, those have to be undercover FBI agents who orchestrated the insurrection. Well, Tucker Carlson grabbed it, went out with it like it was fact. And, for those wondering, well, is he stupid or is he deliberately deceiving the public? I say the answer is both. But however, all he had to do was get a legal dictionary or ask a lawyer friend, what does it mean when there's an unnamed, unindicted co-conspirator? And he would have found out it doesn't mean there's undercover operatives in the indictment. It just means somebody is suspected of criminal wrongdoing and they're not yet chargeable, or after the fact, they decided to cooperate with the prosecution. So we're not naming them to protect them. But of course, this is grabbed on. I wrote a column about it. I went on Brian Williams. I went on Nicole Walsh to simply explain what unindicted co-conspirator means. Right. And now here comes this barrage of ugliness and by the way, they see this as a self-fulfilling prophecy. Frank, the FBI guy, is going on to deny that the FBI orchestrated. It's all part of the deep state.
Right. Yeah, of course, because you're involved. Right. I mean, but I always learn something from you, Frank, which is why we love you. But that unindicted co-conspirator to the normal ear, like, oh, yes, it's something, weird. And as you're saying, that's a legal term that it actually, I think you were saying in one case, it was the defendant's wife. Like, unindicted co-conspirator can mean a lot of things, but okay.
Right.
And you were saying it's Carlson, Louis Gohmert, Matt Gaetz, Marjorie Taylor Greene. You said it is not used to refer to FBI agents or even government informants sent into the riot. Instead, it usually, as you just said, refers to those suspected of being involved, but more evidence is needed, or as you already said, they're cooperating. So co-conspirators, for example, as you say, was suspect's wife in one case. But one FBI interview of a suspected participant in January 6th, Frank, you point out this could be where this started. He's a retired NYPD officer and former Marine, was asked whether he had any connection to any member of Congress or congressional staffer. That simple question provides us the answer as to why the far right has strategically shifted its blame game, because that infers their, right, I assume, moving up the food chain to what we know are connections between some members of Congress and these right-wing groups, right?
Well, precisely. If you're wondering, hey, how come, wait a minute, I thought the far right was saying Antifa pulled off the insurrection. Then I thought they were saying it was peaceful. Then I thought they were saying it was just another day of tourists. And now they're saying, no, never mind. It was the FBI who did it all. So why the shift? As I explained in the column, it's pretty transparent. We've now learned that the FBI, in at least one instance, interviewing one of the defendants in January 6th, asked the question, do you know anybody in Congress or any congressional staffers? And of course, this is fairly obvious now that the FBI is asking these questions because they're looking for a root cause of instigation and aiding and abetting. And the right wing is flipping out. It's why we don't have an independent commission to get to the bottom.
Of course not. Yeah, I love that you tweeted, FBI asked January 6th suspect about ties to Congress and extremist groups. And I'm like, when an FBI guy says, what does that mean, Frank? It's nothing good ever comes after that, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, the FBI does not insert a question into an interview
Right.
unless it has a reason to do so, right?
Right.
And the reasons would be that the question is going to fulfill an intelligence collection requirement for the investigation, like, hey, where did this all start? Who aided and abetted this?
Yeah.
How far up can we go? Or they have reason to believe that this particular person does have a connection and they want him to respond so that they can show him later that, hey, you're lying to us.
Yeah, and more specifically, you said they asked because members of Congress and prominent Republican members have been known to affiliate with right-wing militias. That includes Ted Cruz of Texas, Roger Stone's link to Oath Keepers, Proud Boys' affinity for Matt Gaetz, the Three Percenters' links with the likes of Stone and Paul Gosar of Arizona, Lauren Bobbitt of Colorado. So, as I was saying, Rick, we already know some of the names and but as you write, members of Congress may have become aware the FBI is pursuing the root cause of the January 6th riot. Yeah, it helps that Matt Gaetz is on the judiciary and gets to question the FBI while he's under FBI investigation. But anyway, to the extent you write that certain members of Congress or aides to Trump may be criminally exposed for any possible role they played in aiding and abetting violence, they would have every reason to begin attacking the investigators. Of course, the FBI will blame us. The agency simply trying to deflect attention away from its own role in the riot. It's a tactic right out of the Trump playbook. I mean, it didn't Tucker Carlson talk about, see, it happened in the Gretchen Whitmer. I'm like, to the extent the FBI stopped it, right? Like somebody got cold feet and told the FBI informant what was happening. I mean, this is just sort of, I guess I shouldn't be astonished at anything Fox says or Tucker Carlson says, but how is the FBI involved by doing what they've always done, infiltrating these groups and stopping crimes, right?
Right. The FBI would make themselves look like they failed miserably just so that they can stir up trouble on January 6th. That makes a whole lot of sense to me.
Right.
No, it doesn't. Look, we've reached an era. We're living in a time, Stephanie, where the old encouraging, assuring statement that, hey, just because you say something repeatedly doesn't make it true. Well, guess what? We've flipped that on its head in today's age of social media, 24/7 news, infotainment, masquerading as journalism. Now, if you say something repeatedly enough, it does become someone's reality. And that is the strategy here. It's a strategy of deception. And it starts with Fox News or some other right-wing place. And then everyone picks it up and runs with it. And this FBI conspiracy theory will go for quite some time because they think the FBI is asking about them. And they are.
Yeah. And by the way, you said expect more craziness from Gaetz as the pressure mounts. As the Gaetz investigation ramps up, feds mount sweeping probe into Central Florida political scheme. I mean, that's what I'm trying to. I'm happy clappy, Frank, but I take this as good news that they may be.
Yeah, it appears they have cooperators, at least two, his buddy and one of the young ladies. And here's the thing. I want people to kind of be patient, set their expectations. These are complicated cases. It's not, it's not straight up. There's a third-party app here, right, which is the Sugar Daddy app, allegedly, where he can have plausible deniability and say, well, I was paying for hotel or airfare, but not for the sex. It gets complicated, but I got to tell you what I'm far more fascinated in is the corruption case that developed out of this, which is that he was getting trips to the Caribbean. He was getting women in return for some quid pro quo for an official act. That is incredibly significant. It's complicated, but I think he's very, very much exposed here.
Yep. Yay. Okay, let's talk about Chris Wray. So one thing that you always say on TV, Frank, that sticks with me is you say January 6th was not a failure of intelligence. It was a failure to act on the intelligence we already had. So the FBI director and other senior officials have consistently downplayed the intelligence value of social media posts by Trump supporters prior to January 6th. I'm reading from NBC, suggesting the Bureau had no actionable warning the Capitol would be targeted by a mob. But according to a document entered into court records last week, an FBI agent acknowledged in February investigative report that angry Trump supporters were talking openly in the days before the riot about bringing guns to the Capitol to start a revolution. A review of open source and social media posts leading up to and during the event indicates individuals participating in Stop the Steal were angered about the results, felt Joe Biden had unlawfully been declared president-elect. Users in multiple online groups and platforms discussed traveling to the Capitol armed or making plans to start a revolution. Obviously, a lot of Democrats are not satisfied with the answers they're getting from Chris Wray, right? Richard Blumenthal said, "What I don't understand is why this chatter and raw intelligence didn't prompt a stronger warning, an alarm going to the very top of the United States Congress, because clearly the United States Congress was under severe threat." Carolyn Maloney said FBI Director Wray admitted today he was unaware of the more than 50 tips from social media site Parler prior to the January 6th warning of violence. One user saying, "Don't be surprised if we take the Capitol building. This was a massive intelligence failure by the FBI, plain and simple." Frank, give us your take on all that.
Okay, there's a lot there, but the bottom line is, yeah, I have said it's not so much an intelligence failure as it is a failure to execute on available intelligence, because clearly the intelligence was there. So to the extent you define an intelligence failure as not having anything to act on, I say, no, they had tons to act on. They failed to act on it. I know it's parsing words, but with regard to this recent filing by an FBI agent saying, hey, there was a lot of stuff beforehand, we don't know. And I have to assume he's talking about after the fact. In other words, once the violence happened, by the way, this is extremely typical of the domestic terrorism handcuffs that are on law enforcement, is you have to wait for the violence to occur often before you can then retroactively go back and investigate. So what I sense is happening now, and I know it's happening now, is now that the act occurred, they're going back, they've got defendants, they're going back and getting warrants or searching for their activity online prior to the act. And they're going, wow, now we see this, and they're using it in the case to prosecute. So that's what's going on there. But far more importantly, Stephanie, it shows us we've got to change the rules of the road if we're going to stop the next act of domestic terrorism. It can't be that you wait for the violence and then go back and are allowed to look at stuff. And I think that's why when Ray says he didn't know about Parler, he didn't know blah, 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 the lawyers have shut down any semblance of spying on Americans. And I get it, but we've got to figure out a better way to do this.
Yeah. I was going to just jump over all your experience and training and just say it's because they were, I don't have time for that. But it's because they were white supremacist, domestic terrorist Trump supporters that they looked the other way. It doesn't take a genius to go they obviously, there was a stand down order. There was some sort of, it was the top that ordered the code red, as I always say. But okay, Frank, you have a podcast. This one sounds fascinating. Is this on your podcast? The top FBI scientist shares her advances in rapid DNA, the ability to match your DNA profile at a local police station in 2 hours or less. Is this
here's the cool. So the podcast, it's been out for about a month. It's doing extremely well because it's unprecedented. The FBI's never allowed an outsider to have access every single week to active duty FBI personnel. There are a lot of podcasts out there that talk to retired folks, people like me, but this is active duty. So we've done behavioral profilers talking about serial killers. We've done a PhD scientist telling us that DNA is now down to less than 2 hours, and it's happening at your local police station. They digitize your swab, boom, goes to Washington. While they're holding you legally, they find out you're the rapist, you're the murderer that's in the database. We did an episode on the FBI abroad. This week, just out today, this week's episode is the head of the Behavioral Threat Assessment Center telling you how to know if your crazy uncle or that guy down the street is really going to act out violently. We do that every week.
That is fantastic. It is called The Bureau, right, with Frank Figliuzzi, and that sounds fantastic. We have links. We'll put links up.
It's already up.
At all, they are up at all our places. Frank, it's always a thrill when we get to talk to you. Thanks so much, and your fake Arizona background. Thanks so much.
Stay safe, everybody. Thanks for having me.
You also look like you couldn't possibly be that handsome. Like everything looks fake there, but we love your expertise. Thank you, Frank.
Deep fake.
I like that.